Welcome back to the Heal with Gold show. I am thrilled to bring Aura to the stage today. And I want to share with you guys that I met Aura probably around 8, 9 years ago. Many of you know that I have a fashion brand, Mika Fashion. But before Mika was a clothing brand, we were a handbag brand. And our first photo shoot, I put some messages out. Who would like to volunteer and model for me? I have no money, but you'll get your hair done, you'll get your makeup done, and we'll have just a good time. And Aura was one of the beautiful ladies who volunteered for this photo shoot. So this was a long time ago. Since then, her life changed, which she will share with us. My life has changed so much. And today we reunite here to share some experiences that she goes through to help people. I always find that a big problem that people have is that they think that they're alone in their sufferings or struggles or tests, and they think, why is the world doing this to me? And the reality is that every single person has their own struggles, their own packages, and life is difficult. And it would be so much easier if everybody opened up about what they're going through and got assistance and help and support and love and did it together. And for anybody that read my book, which is right there, The Heal with Gold, one of the chapters is doing it together, is being a support for one another. So I do this show. It's a free show. I don't monetize from the show. We're getting close to 100 episodes. And the purpose is to bring stories or methodologies of healing. But the stories part is for people to hear and see what somebody else is going through, learn from their perspective what they're going through, see what they could do better while they are raising their children. Even if their children in this situation, let's say their children have no issues, but they're going to interact with kids that have the struggles. So when we learn, we are better parents, we're better supporters, we're a better community. And just before I bring Aura, I want to bring a point that I spoke in my book, that I believe I spoke already when I had Elisa Bulow on the show. Elisa Bulow had a son who committed suicide at the age of 19. And I asked Elisa when I interviewed her for my research, and I said to her, can you talk about your son's suicide? And she said, the real story is, what does it mean to raise a child with bipolar, with Asperger's, what it is to raise a child with mental illness, because that's a 19 years story. The suicide is one small part of it. And it opened up the perspective that there is so much that goes behind the scenes that we have no idea. And I'm bringing Aura to the stage to share with us. So when you meet an Aura, you will know how to be there for her, how to be there for the child, and really be a community, because it really takes a village. So without further ado, welcome Aura to the stage. Hi, Aura.
Hi, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Now that you see Aura, you can all see why I had her model for me. It's beautiful. Anybody, when you come into the stage, please say hello. If you're coming from Facebook, you please put your name, because we may not see your name. If you're coming from YouTube, I believe that I will see when you comment who you are. But feel free to participate, to put questions. This is going to be a very flowing conversation, and I will read your comments and I'll be able to put them on the screen, and we'll be able to answer those questions. All right. I'm first of all, I'm so happy and grateful that you're sharing your story with us. It's, for you have done this so much. You've chosen to be so open about it. So maybe by now it's a little bit easier. I'm sure in the beginning it wasn't so much. It takes doing it a bunch of times for it to become natural. But I want to thank you because it is not, you're not just educating mothers of kids with disabilities or inspiring them. It's everybody, it's the entire community. Because if I understand what your life is like and your struggles and what you go through, I will be able to learn to be kinder, more thoughtful as I live my life. And I think that that's the goal. The ultimate goal is for us to really know how to be there for each other. So I'm going to start with a question. You have two healthy girls that are your average, right? They're,
Yes.
I don't like using the word normal because I think we live in a world that none of us are normal. If
Neurotypical.
typical, I like the word typical. So
Yeah.
they're the typical girls, right?
Yes.
And then you have a son who is atypical.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know? Tell us the story. Did you know when
Yeah.
you were pregnant? How did it go in the beginning?
So I didn't know, I didn't even suspect anything until he was around like 6 months old. He had some swallowing problems like before that, but there was nothing that was so significant that I was like, oh my gosh, I need to go, get him checked out. And then he, at 6 months, just wasn't meeting milestones. He wasn't babbling, he wasn't bearing any weight on his feet. Um, just like normal baby milestones weren't happening. I took him to the pediatrician numerous times and they kept saying, he's fine, he's delayed, he'll grow out of it. And this is like a trend that I saw throughout all the doctors and the specialists that I took him to was he's fine. Like they were so quick to write everything off. And I think it's very one of the biggest lessons I learned is trust your gut, like moms know best. And also that you have to push for answers. I think doctors are, especially these days, are just very quick to say it's anxiety, it's this, it's that, it's nothing. Come back in a few months, and that's like precious time that's wasted, where you could have been doing something proactive for your child. So we got literally written off for months and months. Went to every specialist until I finally made the decision to go to the geneticist myself because I had done so much research. And he, right away, when I told him what was going on, he said, I need to go look something up. I'll be right back. And I knew right away that something was wrong.
So tell us what is his diagnosis?
So he has a syndrome called Howe-Fountain syndrome. And when he was diagnosed, it was so rare that he was only the 47th person in the world to be diagnosed. And it was called USP7 at the time. It was just the gene, didn't have a name. And it's a neurodevelopmental disorder. So it affects basically, I mean, his entire body. The biggest thing would be like the symptoms that stand out the most are they say intellectual disability. He doesn't meet that criteria, but he has significant learning disabilities and is just globally delayed. Seizures, low muscle tone, swallowing problems, sleeping problems. For the first 2 years of his life, my husband and I took turns holding him the whole night because he just wouldn't sleep. Like he was just crying all night long. Um, and then a lot of kids who have the syndrome actually don't talk and don't walk. So he's considered to be on the more mild end, which, he's still significantly impacted by it, but there are definitely kids who have it way worse than he does.
So tell me, how old is he now, and what is he able to do and what he's not able to do in comparison to other
Yeah.
kids his age?
So he'll be 7 in September. And he is, I would say, his neurologist says he's about a year to like 2 years behind his peers developmentally. So while he can run, he's just like a very slow runner, and he also has low muscle tone. So he kind of reminds me of, those blow up people that are in front of like a car dealership that are all like
This
wavy. That's what
this
he's always reminded me of when he runs. And speech wise, he actually went from not being able to talk at all and having to use an AAC device, which is like basically an iPad that he would have to point or click on different words and it would say it for him, to eventually learning how to speak. He didn't start speaking until he was 3. Um, he does speak in full sentences, like you can have a conversation with him, but he has a pretty profound stutter that just makes it hard to have like a fluid conversation with him because it's just noticeable at every point in a sentence. And he will actually notice when someone starts to sort of lose interest because he's taking so long to get it out, and it makes him very upset. And one of the things that bothers me the most as a mom is he'll be trying to tell me something and an adult next to me will just start talking over him to me, and you can see that he just wants the focus to be on him because he wants to get what he needs to say out. And if that person doesn't stop talking, it is like a huge trigger for him. um, and I have to then say, like, can you just let him get out what he needs to say? So that's been challenging. And then academically right now, I think is the biggest challenge for us because while he does know a lot, he is supposed to be going into first grade, and is now going to repeat kindergarten because at the end of the year was diagnosed with an array of learning disabilities. The most profound one is dyslexia, and I'm upset at myself that we waited so long to get him tested because he didn't learn. I shouldn't say he didn't learn anything this year, but it so significantly impacted him that he learned a minimal amount because, he was learning the alphabet and he would come home with this packet, and the first page would say Aleph a bunch of times, and then the next page would say Aleph and Bet. And we had gotten through like 3 letters and he couldn't get past it. And I couldn't figure out why after months of going through it. And then I realized like something is not clicking, and I didn't know if it was a memory issue or if it was dyslexia. And that's why I decided to go get him tested. Um, so there's a lot, like he requires tons of repetition in order to learn something new. He still, if you ask him the days of the week, can't remember them unless he sings them in a song. Um, and it's just, I worry about like how far he can go in the future. Like what is his, I guess, intellectual like capacity? Like how much can he eventually learn? Because he's smart in so many other ways. Like he is very creative, and part of me thinks he'll be an engineer one day, but he doesn't know the alphabet. So it's hard. It's hard to see him so far behind his peers. Like he had, kindergarten graduation, and all the kids in his class were singing and dancing to the songs that they had rehearsed, and he was just standing there and looking around, and he had no idea what to do. And he was supposed to say one of the opening lines with 2 other kids and didn't even realize that it was his turn. So he didn't go up with those 2 other kids, and then finally realized, and he actually went up by himself and said the line by himself. So it's just, everything is just, it's at a much slower pace. So, I never thought I would have to hold my child back, but ultimately, like, I think that's what's best for him now. And he's got to do things at his own pace.
Tell me about your experience and your feelings and emotions through that, because I talk a lot about the fact that we don't know how to grieve. We're not taught how to grieve. In the Jewish religion, there is a process when somebody dies, and it's a very clear step by step, right? This is what you do on the first day, this is what you do on the 7 days, and then 30 days, and then a year, and then the anniversary,
Mm-hmm.
which helps you process the loss and slowly but surely reintegrate into life and accept that you have a pain, you have a loss, but then you have the room for the joy. And it's done very methodical to help people through the loss when somebody passes away. I find it that there isn't that kind of a process for grieving things that are not death.
Yeah.
And there is, I always talk about when people get divorced, then they're grieving that their marriage didn't go through, but then there is a million things that they're grieving. What's going to be, how they're going to walk their child down the aisle. Is it an amicable divorce? It's not. When you're going to have the plays, soccer, this, how, are both parents going? Is one parent going? I always bring the grieving of divorce. And when my daughter, she just graduated law school, and I was there, and there were quite a few graduates that only one parent was there. And I asked my daughter, where is the other parent? And she said, well, they didn't feel comfortable, so they had to take turns. For the graduation, one parent came, and then the other one is going to celebrate some other way. And that's grieving, right? That parent that wasn't there had to grieve for that loss of being there at that special moment.
Right.
So my question to you is, did you have an opportunity to grieve the dreams that comes with the birth of a son? You have two daughters. This is your first son. And did you get support? Like how are you handling it? I'm always curious because I find it that women, especially,
Mm-hmm.
and mothers even more so, we go into this fix it mode. And I see from the way you speak, I took him here, I took him there, I did the research. I wasn't going to listen to the doctors because I knew they weren't right. So I went, this is what mothers do. But
Yeah.
then where is your time to grieve and feel and cry and scream? And
Well, I think my grief sort of has changed the way it looks, from when it first started. I'm a very emotional person. I think most people who know me know that I'm like very in touch with my emotions. I'm a very empathetic person, and I wear my emotions on my sleeve. Like I'm not, afraid to talk about how I feel. And when we first got the news, I remember I came home and I think because I had mentally prepared myself that something was wrong with him, it wasn't a surprise to me. But at the same time, I actually grew up with a sibling with autism, so I my childhood looked a very certain way, and I did not want my girls to endure the same childhood that I did. That was almost like thinking about that was almost worse than thinking about what Jake's future was going to look like. Because I, in my head, was like, he's going to look like this family member, and things are not going to go well. But at the same time, I was so worried, like, how is this going to impact my daughters also? So it was extremely emotional for me because it wasn't just worrying about my son and grieving the future that he might not have and how different his future was going to look, but also grieving the fact that my girls were going to suffer because of his diagnosis. Because as a sibling to a child with special needs, there's so much sacrifice that they have to make. It's he this is something that I really don't post about on social media, is that he's actually very aggressive. He's a very sweet child, but gets almost like set off very easily and can go from like 0 to 100 very quickly. And so my girls have kind of realized like it's almost better to just give him what he wants and back away than to start arguing with him. Things like that, and like watching them, get hurt. And he's not aggressive with people outside of our family, but even just, watching that, it's really hard for me. And I think like at the beginning, I was also in that fix it mode, like taking him to speech and taking him to PT and OT. And it was just constant appointments. And as he's gotten older, we've fallen into a routine of, he goes to school and he has most of his therapies at school. And then I picked him up and we just had this sort of, same afternoon. But when he was at school, it left me with so much time with my thoughts. And it's very overwhelming. Like when you have a child with special needs, you realize that they are going to be dependent on you for your entire life. And there's no, you don't know if they're going to go off to college. Will you ever be an empty nester? Will they ever get married? Like these are all worries that I had. And it's like plays on an endless loop in my mind. Like it's something that I'm always thinking about. And just the stress of having to worry about where is he going to school, and our friend, our kids in the community ever going to remember that he exists and invite him over for a play date. Stuff like that is just constantly on my mind, no matter how many years out from his diagnosis I am. And I'm one of those people who I'll just go drive to the beach and I will sit in my car and I just cry. And a lot of times, especially at the beginning, it was, why me? Why, like, what did I do? What did my family do to deserve something like this? And, a lot of friends at the beginning gave me those, God only gives you what you can handle, and like all those phrases that are just meant to make you feel
I
better.
have to interrupt you with
Yeah.
that. I hate that sentence. I know that
So do
people. I know that people mean well.
Yeah.
I know that it comes from a good place, and it
Right.
comes from a place of not knowing what to say.
Mm-hmm.
You just want to say something that's going to make the other person feel better, and people don't realize that it doesn't feel better. But
Yeah.
I asked this question for the same person that I mentioned at the beginning, Elisa Bulow. If you don't know her, research her or listen to her speeches because she's beyond. But I asked Elisa, I said, Elisa, what about this sentence? Because I was going through a very difficult loss, and I felt that it was way more than I could handle. I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
The pain sometimes is so deep you can't breathe. You breathe because of the mechanics that keeps you keep breathing, right? Your body wants to live, but
Yeah.
your emotion and your soul sometimes it's not in tune, right? And it's very painful. And she told me, Miriam, that is not true. God doesn't give you what you can handle. God
Right.
gives you always, she said like that, a little bit outside of what you can handle. So you need to expand as a human.
Mm-hmm.
That situation is inside of you and you can handle it. That expansion, that experience that you go through, that expands who you are, that's the pain.
Yeah.
And that's the growth. And that's what we're here to expand. But
Mm-hmm.
the experiences that we get are 100% outside of what we can handle. Because if it was inside, it wouldn't be difficult because we would have the tools.
Right.
And right?
Yeah. I mean, I always say to my husband, I'm not cut out for this. Like, I'm not cut out for this life. I don't know how much longer I can handle it, because there's so many stressors that come from the situation that people don't even know about, like that are going on, and this affects our entire family. It's really taken a toll on all of us. And like most days, I wake up and I'm like, I can't get through another day. And I have lost so many friendships from this, because it's easy at the beginning for people to say, I'm here for you, and if you ever need anything, let me know what you need. And then people go back to their lives, and they kind of, you end up being on this journey by yourself. And I lost energy to go out, and to have fun, because kids are hard in general. And then you have a child who needs constant attention and constant supervision. At the end of the day, you don't want to get dressed and go out. You want to take off your makeup and get into bed and just, shut off from the world. And it was hard for me. And I'm sure there are other people who are in my situation who haven't lost friendships through this, but I think being an introvert, it just made me almost even more of an introvert. And it's been very hard. And I remember, I'm kind of afraid to admit this out loud, but I was seeing a therapist at one point, and she asked me if I ever had thoughts of committing suicide. And I said, no, but I have thoughts of getting in the car and driving away from this all, because when you're a little girl or a teenager and you're thinking about what your life is going to look like, you never, ever expect it to be this, to be parenting a child who needs so much support, and you have to make these decisions that are so impossible, and you're always questioning whether it's the right decision, and you never get to go do things that other couples get to do. Like my husband and I get to go on vacation for 2 days, maybe once a year if we're lucky. And that's, if we're able to find a family member who can watch Jake and our girls. So it's just sacrificing so much. And most days I'm like, I can't handle this. I don't want to be the decision maker anymore. And actually was just talking to a friend. I was saying, I need to work in order to support Jake's needs. Like we're looking at a dyslexia program that's $40,000 for this year. And that's not even including the therapies that he still needs and treatments and everything else, that comes along with a special needs kid. And I was like, I need to work to support him, but I can't work because I have to be around all the time. He has an appointment at least once, if not twice a week. And so I've never been able to have a consistent job because I've always had to be there. So it's just, you never in a million years, expect your life to turn out this way.
I really empathize with the desire to run away. This is something that I have felt. And it's interesting because I've talked to myself. I talk to myself a lot. I'm a good listener.
Me too.
I have a very good back and forth going on here. And I talked with myself about this idea of running away. And I came to the conclusion that there is a certain amount of physical rest when you do run away. And by what I mean by running away is taking a couple of days off for yourself, right? Knowing, I've gone one time, I go a lot to Portugal to the factory. And then one time I told my husband, I'm not going to go back the first day that I could go back. I'm going to stay another 24 hours to run. And I went to a different town with a little porch facing the river, and I had my computer and I just wrote the entire day. I just needed that. Yeah. So sometimes the problems don't go away, but you do get a little bit of rest in order to come back and face the emotional again. And I think it's really important to find ways for you to run away sometimes. You're not running away from the problems. You're going to come back to the same problems.
Right.
At least you get a little bit revigorated to continue. I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned about the lost friendships. And that it's very interesting because I'm also an introvert. My priority was always my family, so I'm very close to my family, and I always had just a small handful of friends, and we're so in touch with what we are and what our needs are. So I haven't lost my friends through difficult times, because it always happens, right? Friends, it's like seasons. You gain some, you lose some. It's what it is. But I was always very curious about the needs that people have, and the society not understanding and not knowing, and what we need to know. I mean, I need to know, other people need to know. What would you have wanted? What would you want today as a support today? For example, this thing that you said, of people giving a chance for Jake to speak and get his thoughts, and they not recognizing that when they interrupt, it's a trigger, and it causes so much emotion, not positive emotion, that then you need to handle. This is a fact that if people knew, then people would learn how to react. My husband had 2 strokes. So after the strokes, I became very involved in the stroke community. My husband have very minor aphasia. I don't know if you know what aphasia is.
Actually went to grad school for speech therapy.
You know what aphasia. So sometimes a different word comes, right? They have communicating. With my husband, sometimes he'll just use the wrong word thinking that he's using the right word. But he does not have major. Actually, Brad is here. Hey, Brad. Brad had a stroke, and he has aphasia. But I learned about aphasia. I learned a lot about aphasia. And one of the things of aphasia patients is that it takes them time to get the entire concept that they want to
Mhm.
communicate. And when you talk in the middle or you interrupt their thought, it completely takes away their thinking.
Yeah.
So it's important to be patient and let them communicate. Oh, look at that. Jerry is also here. Oh, my stroke friends. Um, and Fernanda is here. And yes, and I'm gonna
I
read
like
this one
that
in a
comment.
second. Just to hold on, I'm gonna read yours in a minute. But uh, we need to by learning, by being
Mhm.
around my stroke community, I was able to learn and then be able to behave properly when I'm with them so they can communicate.
Right.
So tell us a few things about Jake's how we need to be to serve you
Yeah.
considering Jake. Yeah. You know, dealing with Jake and with you around Jake.
Right. I mean, I think the biggest thing for me was at the beginning, I had some friends who would reach out. I think it was just so shocking to everybody that people were like, let's get you out of the house. Let's go for lunch and let's go do this. And I was so depressed that I was like, I don't have the emotional or like mental capacity to socialize. That was at the beginning. And now I'm at the point where I feel like I just want people to remember that I exist, because I don't have it in me to say like I'm going to text this person and ask them if they want to go for a walk or want to go to lunch, because I have a to-do list like a mile long in my head of everything that I need to get done for him, for that day, that week. And just knowing that like a friend was thinking about me just to check in, or just dropping by without even texting me, just to catch up for a few minutes. Like, it's people forget, like it's out of sight, out of mind. You're not on their radar anymore. And everyone has something that they're going through. I don't think there's anyone I know that doesn't have something challenging going on. And I think it's easy for everyone to kind of say like, why hasn't this person reached out? So it goes both ways. And obviously I can't always be the recipient, but I also have to be, the one to reach out to other people. But just, checking in every once in a while, that to me is like the most meaningful thing. And I think it differs based on the person, but that's it's important just, to let someone know that you're thinking of them. And that, I think also because I post about Jake and what we're going through all the time, like it's very clear what's going on in our lives. And if I was a friend and I saw what this person was posting, I would text him and say, "Hey, I saw you posted that it was an emotional day when Jay graduated kindergarten. How are you doing?" And I remember there was one friend who, the day of his graduation, texted me, and we're not particularly close, but she was the only one who messaged me and said, "I just wanted to see how you were doing because I know today must have been really hard for you." So, and I really appreciated that. Like, it wasn't a long conversation, but it was just, I'm thinking about you. And that's very impactful to me.
You know, one of the things that we want most is to belong.
Yeah.
That need in the sense of belonging. It's something that in general our community is good at, but at the same time, I find it that we're very much in tune and connected when at the moment that the tragedy happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly but surely, everybody goes to their lives, and then that person becomes forgotten. And
Yeah.
then we needed the next tragedy to happen to wake up and pray and visit and give food or take the person out. And I think that what you're saying is a huge lesson because your need is so simple, right?
Yeah.
It's something so small for the
Right.
other person, for the giver, but
Mm-hmm.
for the receiver, it's so important and meaningful.
Yeah. I mean, I like, people don't realize like we're still in this difficult time. Like, it hasn't gotten easier. It's actually gotten significantly more difficult. Like, he's made progress, yes, but his needs have changed drastically. And he's also a child now with emotions and actions. And those are things, when he was 2 and he was all, cute and innocent and he was just smiling all the time, it was a lot easier. But as he's gotten older, it's become significantly more challenging. And I find myself like much more emotional these days than I was back then, and like just waiting for someone to be like, "Are you okay?" Because I just want to scream from the rooftops, like, "I am not okay. I'm not." You know,
Oh,
it's you.
you
It's like you're in the depths of this like pit, and you're like, "When is someone going to get me out of here?"
Okay.
It's
So
never.
it's funny. I talk a lot about it. In my book, I talk about victim people being in victim mode and
Hmm.
survivor mode, and then being a thriver. And the victim mode is at that time that we're waiting for people to save us and to take us out and to solve the problem for us.
Yeah.
And I always say, nobody's coming. Nobody's coming
True.
because we're we're supposed to do this work, right? This challenge that we got, it is for
Hmm.
us. Now that doesn't mean that people can support, check in, take you out, watch him, do something for you so you can have a break. For
Hmm.
sure, for sure, we are part of a community and we need to be there for each other. But the that energy of, please come and help me and save me, it's not happening because this
Right.
is your challenge and everybody's dealing with their own. And I think that the moment that we accept that nobody's coming, I'm my only, God, obviously, but I'm the one doing the steps to save myself. How am I going to do that? And I think that a show like this is a step because
Hmm.
people are going to see, and I hope that people are going to call and are going to, I hope that friends see it and understand what they need. I mean, this is so simple.
Yeah.
Eh, I teach my children all the time. We live at a time that to do chesed, to do acts of kindness is very simple because a phone call could be an act of kindness,
Hmm.
right? And we think that to be a kind person, we have to do something so big, but we don't.
Right.
And one of the stories that I like to say is that I hate taking the dishes out of the dishwasher. Hate it. It's like you have to bend and you put and you take out and it's endless.
Hmm.
And I made one time a decision that I'm going to empty and take out the stuff from the, put and take out from the dishwasher. It's an act of kindness that I'm doing for my family. So I get points because I don't enjoy it. So where it matters, I get points for it. And because
Yeah.
I know I'm going to get those points, then my attitude changes towards doing the dishes.
I like that mindset. I need to adopt that.
I think that one thing that maybe will help you
Mhm.
is to look at you as a mother to Jake. That Jake has a soul. He has a grown-up soul. We think that we have little children, and
Yeah.
they're little children, but their soul is a big soul. Their
Hmm.
soul is as big as our own soul, right? And he was gifted to you, and you were gifted to him
Hmm.
for a reason. You
Yeah.
needed to be his mother, and he needed to be your son. And you don't understand why, and it doesn't make it any easier. But what you were meant for each other.
Hmm.
Everything that you do for him is chesed. It's not an obligation. Not
Right.
every mother does and goes to the extent of what you do.
Hmm.
We always can strive to be better mothers, better siblings, better daughters and children, right? We can be better. It's
Yeah.
a choice that we make. Can we be better X, Y, and Z to somebody else?
Right.
So
Yeah. I mean, I just to interrupt you on that note. I actually was just talking to my mom, and I was telling her like there are, we're trying to find a school for Jake, and most schools refuse to take him, and the only schools that will take him is public school, which is not a good option for him right now because it just doesn't give him what he needs academically. And I was telling my mom that my husband and I were talking about moving back to New York because there's not enough in Florida to support a child like him who really needs a ton of services. And she said, "Well, what does everybody else do who has a child with learning disabilities in Florida?" And it's like, I think a lot of people just accept it and say, okay, so my child's going to public school. But for me, I see his future potential, and I'm not willing to give up and say, I'm just putting him in public school and what will be will be. I want to know like that when I look back in 20 years from now, that I did every single thing I could to get him as far as he could possibly go. And if that means not, spending money for an entire year so that I can afford to pay for this special dyslexia program, then that's what I'm going to do. So, yeah.
And I really hope that you will see those things as acts of kindness and as chesed, as being going above and beyond and proving that you are fulfilling what you're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be doing in the best of ways. And I think that if people realize that being a parent, how you are a parent, it's a choice. Everything in life is a choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
You choose to wake up cheerful, you can choose to wake up in a bad mood. It's a choice. I
Yeah.
write everywhere joy is a choice. We have a choice. How you're parenting Jake is a choice. How you wake up, and if you put makeup on, you don't put makeup in the morning, it's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those little choices combined make the incredible person that you are. And it doesn't make it easier, but I just want you to know that it's seen and appreciated. Hey, Paul. Paul is also from my stroke communities. Nice to see you, Paul. I want to ask you
Yeah.
about, if you don't want to, if you're not comfortable talking about that, that's totally fine. Or anything that I ask you that you're not comfortable, just veer the conversation. One thing that happens a lot is the strain on the marriage
Mm-hmm.
and strain in other relationships within the family, the nucleus, right? Because even with parents, with your parents, let's say, or
Mm-hmm.
other parents, because we feel, I know people that had children, and the grandparents, they don't feel like babysitting, they don't feel like being present, right? There's all types
Yeah.
of families. They say, I've done it, I've done my time, this is your children, your life, I don't want to be part. And then there is resentment. There's resentment with spouses. The spouse gets to go out, they get a break. I don't get a
Mm-hmm.
break, but they are seen like the ones who are working and providing. And how did that dynamic affect your life?
Yeah. So a lot of what you mentioned actually is very similar. So when I was first taking Jake for genetic testing, I was doing it by myself. And not because my husband didn't offer to come, but I think at that point I was like, only one of us needs to go and you need to go to work. So this is going to be my job. And I took him to every appointment, every blood draw, everything by myself, every therapy appointment for years. And it got to a point where I was very resentful because I felt like this has become my job and I have completely lost myself in all of this. Like, you get to leave the house and go to work every day and, have a social life, but I'm stuck at home with a child who needs me 24/7 and I don't get a break at all. Like, it's on my mind all the time, that burden of constantly having to stay ahead of his problems and constantly having to worry about what comes next never leaves. Like, that's something that my husband doesn't have to think about because I was the one going to those appointments and making those decisions. And it became a lot of like almost competition. Like, I've been with him all day, I'm going out now, like I don't want to be home anymore. um, like, it brought out this side of me that I didn't like, where I was just almost like angry all the time. Like, I don't want to be just his mom. I want to be, like, I had so many passions that I had. Like, I went back to school for aesthetics and thought that I would finally have my chance at having a career. And then all these new health problems with him and these educational problems came about just this year. And I'm not working anymore. And there is like that little bit of resentment. Like, I will never be able to have a career and a life like outside of being his mom. Um, there's a lot of that. And there's just also the fact that we never have time, to connect because we're both so tired and, so overwhelmed that at the end of the day, There's no conversation like, how was your day? None of that. It's just like, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. Like, I can't even, talk anymore. And it's just because there's so much on my mind. Like, I can't get a break from it. It's always there. So it's hard, and it's hard in general as a parent when you have little kids, like, to make time for your spouse. And then you add on the burden of having a child like this, and it makes it like so much more amplified and requires you to put in much more work, like a lot more work to stay connected.
Yeah, I think that people forget that when somebody is dealing with something like that, it is multifaceted.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't affect one area of life. You even said that you take such care to make sure that life is good for your daughters.
Mm-hmm.
So your focus is in so many levels that sometimes you could lose yourself
Yeah.
because where can you prioritize aura in this whole story? But when you're on a plane, you need to put the mask first. And I
Yeah.
think it's an overused example, but I think it's a very clear example because
Mm-hmm.
our reaction is to protect those that we feel responsible for. But you can never do that at your best unless you are okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It was actually my husband who encouraged me to go back to school, because I had said to him last year that I just completely lost I didn't know who I was anymore. And I felt like a shell of myself. Like, I had no drive to do anything anymore. And I just felt like the life was sucked out of me. And he said, "You need to go do something you love." I've always loved skincare. And he was like, "Go back to school." And he took on a lot more responsibility with picking my kids up, from carpool. But it required so much, like, preparation on my part, because I had to have dinner made for the entire week on Sunday. And, there was no time to do laundry and all of those things. Like, I still had all the responsibilities I had before, but I was doing something for myself. So it's like you have to find that balance of being able to make yourself a priority and also still taking care of everybody else.
Right.
So it's hard, and like trying to give my daughters one-on-one time and making them feel important. It's a lot of
You know,
balancing.
I I used to define myself as a mother.
Mm-hmm.
That was my definition of a being. If I had to say in one word, what am I? It always came as mother. And as my kids grew and issues and things that I had to deal with them, um, I saw myself. Actually, that's how the whole kintsugi thing happened, was because kintsugi, my first image of a kintsugi piece, and for those who don't know, kintsugi is the Japanese art in which when pottery breaks, they put the pieces back together and they highlight with gold. I have an example here. This is kintsugi. And when I saw that for the first time, I saw myself as a vase. I was the vase, my kids were the flowers, but I had fallen and my vase was broken. So what was the point of this vase story was that I couldn't care for my children because I was broken. And through this process, through the last 12 years, a lot of work that I did, I realized something, that we shouldn't see ourselves as mothers. We shouldn't define ourselves as mothers, because motherhood, in essence, is a shorter period of time that we are. In your case, it is longer because of needs. But I'm going to get back to that because I don't think that that's the case. But we are mothers for an X period of time, but we are daughters for always. And I don't mean daughters of our parents, but daughters of God, right? We're children.
Mm-hmm.
And our children were put in this world to go through the challenges that they go through. And it is not for us to fix them. They need to fix. Just like nobody's going to come and save us,
Right.
the issues that our children are going to go through, it is for them to deal with. That's why I said I'm going to come back to that, is that I really don't believe that you will need to do everything for Jake. I believe that it's going to come a point that Jake is going to be independent or semi-independent or live in a structure, in a place, in a structure that
Mhm.
you're not going to need to do all of it. And because we are mothers temporarily, when we define ourselves, our whole being is motherhood. When the time comes that these kids leave, we suddenly feel completely lost,
Yeah.
because now what are we? What's going to happen? Your oldest is going to go to college, your second one is going to go to college, Jake is going to become more and more independent, and he's going to be fine. And then suddenly you're going to look and you're going to say, oh my God, who am I? What is this relationship? Who is this man that I leave him? I don't know him anymore. But if we define ourselves as children, that we're here to grow, to become better humans, we have this temporary motherhood job,
Hmm.
then the kids have issues, and it's their responsibility to deal with those issues. And they will come and visit me and be grateful because I was a great mom, or not so grateful because they're going to resent us for whatever reason. But we are still something, because
Hmm.
we're defining ourselves as mothers. We're defining ourselves as something that we are for always.
Yeah. I mean, when I look back at the past 6 years, and I feel like, everyone's like, there's a reason why you were given a child like this. And never did I think that I would be an advocate, for special needs. I never thought that I would publicly, talk about my child and everything that he goes through. But I realized like that it's actually the amount of women that I've spoken to who reach out to me on Instagram. I'm going through something similar, and it's so nice to know that I'm not alone. Like those are, I've realized like I I am a friend to these people, or a confidant, and I'm an advocate. And I like, there's so much more that's come from this than just being his mom and his caregiver and chauffeur and everything else. But there's like a meaningful piece to it that's come out of it also.
100%. And
Yeah.
not everything has to be perfect
Yeah.
in the care of our children. You know, I, I, I think that we strive for this incredible perfection of a life that we're going to give our children.
Hmm.
We didn't have that, and it's okay that we didn't have that. It's okay that they won't have it either.
Right.
And there are certain things they're going to have to manage, and you need to prioritize yourself.
Hmm.
I think it's okay for us to do a little less. I think I'm the youngest of three, and I think I'm the more normal. I always say I'm the most normal of my family. Why? Because my parents at that point weren't so on top of me.
Right.
No, they were busy. They screwed up the first two. And by that time, they forgot that I existed, and
Exactly.
I'm better. So I think that sometimes doing a little less is not less.
Right.
If you do a little less for the kids and a little bit more for you, it comes to a
Hmm.
point that things have to be readjusted. I was going to ask you about the aesthetics because I had seen the ads, and then I stopped seeing the ads, and I wasn't sure what had happened with that, because you were also doing hairstyling at some point.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
well, the hairstyling just got to be, it was too much for me standing on my feet all day. Um, and I just always loved skincare. As someone who has struggled with my skin my entire life, I wanted to be able to help other people. Um, and it was also, I just wanted to go back to school to gain more knowledge. Like I knew X amount, but I wanted to learn so much more just for myself. And I remember my last day of school, we had to present a business plan. And I had this whole grand vision. I was going to open up a med spa, and it was going to be this whole big deal. And I literally, in my head, could imagine what my grand opening was going to look like. And I never really got to do it. I ended up working out of my house, and because I couldn't put in the time that I needed in order for it to be a successful business, because at this point in my life it's not my priority. My priority is my son. And then on top of that, having one of my kids, has like a health issue that we're dealing with. I wish I had time to work. I have people texting me, hey, can I come for a facial? And I wish I could say yes, but in like the spare time that I have now, I have to catch up on everything that needs to be taken care of in my house, and I'm always on the phone for Jake, always. I've spent the last 6 months on phone calls trying to find a school for him, never thinking that it would be this hard to find a school that will take him. Um, so it's just, unfortunately, it's not my priority.
People have no idea, right,
Yeah.
what is going on behind the scenes and what it takes to. But I think that speaking more, maybe people
Mhm.
have ideas or about schools,
Yeah.
about their experience. So maybe this show is going to help. Maybe somebody's going to listen from the community and we'll have an idea for you.
Yeah.
And
It's just, it's hard because he's almost like in this gray area. Like you have schools for kids who have learning disabilities but are neurotypical. You have schools for kids who are low functioning, have special needs. And then you have nothing for the kids who have special needs but are high functioning but have a lot of learning disabilities. So there's nothing down here to service that. And there was one school that I thought would take him and made it seem like they would take him. And they're specifically for learning disabilities. And I remember the day they sent me an email and they said, he's not a candidate. And I asked why, and they refused to give me a reason. And I said to my husband, like, I cannot believe that this is happening. Like there are no options. And we loved the private, he was in private school with my girls and he was in the most loving environment. A girl that I grew up with was his teacher in kindergarten and he had an amazing year there. But that school is just, it's not built for kids with learning disabilities. And, they said we could keep him there for as long as we wanted, but ultimately it wasn't serving, it wasn't doing anything for him anymore. And so now we're trying to figure it all out.
I believe that you're going to get the answer. Pray for it. It's going to come, Um,
God willing.
yeah, so much. The answers are there. They exist,
Yeah.
The medicine comes, God created the medicine before he created the diseases. So the answer and the path exists. And
Hmm.
God willing, you will get it soon and figure out his path and find time for you. And before we finish, I just wanted you to share something that you would like to leave the viewers, something that you want to share that you think it's important or that it's inspirational, a quote, anything.
I actually saw something recently on social media that really stuck with me. It was, someone, there are so many people who say God only gives his toughest battles to his strongest warriors or soldiers, something like that. And it's in the same vein of God only gives you what you can handle. And when you're in the thick of it, you're not thinking, I can handle this. You're thinking, I can't handle this. I don't want this battle. But it almost makes you realize like you have to put everything in God's hands and say, I'm doing the most that I can and the best that I can. And there's a reason why God is giving me a struggle like this. And every struggle ends at some point, right? Whether that's when somebody dies or not, but at some point it does end. And you just have to do your best and have faith that things will eventually get better, even if you can't see it in the moment.
Yeah, we can never see it in the moment when we're in the darkest point of that tunnel. And then
Hmm.
suddenly it's amazing when the light starts showing up. But I always say you want to bring the light to the darkness, right? You don't, there's no, we don't get extra points for suffering.
Right.
So we, we can live our lives, happy and upbeat, or we can live it miserable. We don't get extra points. So there's always ways to improve our mood, and definitely doing it together and becoming somebody that inspires is because in my book, I say that the 10th golden nugget to healing mind and soul is from all the women that I interviewed, is that when they start using whatever broke them to
Hmm.
heal others, that is the biggest source of strength for them because it gives reason. This
Yes.
oh, this happened to me, so that with my wisdom, I can help so many more. So one person suffering for 10, 150 to gain from my knowledge, suddenly you say, okay, it's not fun. I don't love it. I don't enjoy it. But if I can help so many others,
Mhm.
then fine, I'll take it one for the team.
Yeah,
I'll go through it, but you feel strengthened by it.
yeah.
So continue speaking about it. And I really hope that people will learn to be better friends, me included, and and learn from this, from everything that you shared, so we can apply that into our relationships and our connections everywhere. Aura, thank you so much for opening up, for sharing your story with us. And we wish you a lot of luck. Everybody, thank you so much for joining tonight. God willing, in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or so, I'll have another show. I will notify you what it is. Please share this content. Take it, it's on my page on YouTube. Share the link. I don't need it. It's not for fame for me. I'm an introvert. I don't care about any of that. But share it, because you don't know who's going to listen to this story and feel inspired, empowered, and it could change their lives. So please do that if you care about your friends. And have a good night, everybody.